Good evening and thank you for joining us. We begin with breaking news about Manitoba. The federal government says it's deploying the Red Cross and the armed forces to help the province get through its brutal third wave. Today, Manitoba reported 353 new cases. More than 5,000 Manitobans are now dealing with active infections. Manitoba is still by far the hardest hit province in terms of the infection rate per capita. In the last 7 days, 240 of every 100,000 people tested positive. And there's so much pressure on hospitals in that province that 4 more critically ill patients have had to be transferred to hospitals in Ontario. A total of 14 Manitobans are now receiving care in Ontario. As Heather Yourex-West explains in tonight's top story, the worst of this wave may still be ahead.
18, 19.
Chris Eastford considered himself healthy and strong, but when he contracted COVID-19 last month, it was less than a week before the 35-year-old found himself in intensive care.
When they told me, like, it's time for essentially a medically induced coma, that crushed me. That it devastated me.
The Manitoba dad spent 12 days on a ventilator. His wife left to watch over FaceTime, unsure if her husband would ever come home.
Our son's only 15 months old now, and she was concerned just as much as I was that he might not have a dad at the end of it.
Eastford was not eligible for the vaccine when he became sick. He's now recovering, but it's a similar story for many others who got infected during Manitoba's severe third wave. Younger patients who have now filled Manitoba's intensive care units to capacity. 11 of the province's 74 COVID ICU patients are less than 40 years old.
Our COVID units are full and our patients are backing up into our emergency departments. So we have COVID patients who were intubated and ventilated in the emergency department.
Others are being transferred to hospitals across Ontario for care.
What we're hearing is we haven't reached our peak yet. That last week we were hearing our peak was 2 to 4 weeks away.
The third wave came later for Canada's prairie provinces. Alberta is also now dealing with more patients in intensive care than ever before.
We've never seen this many patients in ICUs in Alberta. So we're really drawing from everywhere to manage, both in terms of finding physical space to fit the patients, as well as finding healthcare personnel who are trained and able to look after the patients.
The good news for that province, after hitting a record high last week, ICU patient volumes are now beginning to fall, suggesting Alberta's third wave may have peaked, something Manitoba can only hope will happen soon. Heather Yourex-West, Global News, Calgary.
A large event took place in Ontario this long weekend despite strict COVID-19 restrictions. Hundreds of people gathered in Pickering, just east of Toronto, for a parking lot party. Police say they were aware of the event, but as Sean O'Shea explains, they didn't do anything to stop it.
At least one person was injured, but the result could have been much worse. Car lovers took over this Pickering shopping mall parking lot east of Toronto.
Lots of people, man, over probably 1,000 people here. Cars, modified, everything.
It was supposed to be safe, according to Jonathan Bola, who came to watch.
Stay in your cars, but a lot of people didn't do that.
Instead, some did this.
Drifts, donuts. Yeah, they were drifting all the way around here.
Driving tight circles in the packed crowd.
What these people have done is disrupted our community, flouted, defied the COVID regulations. So it's just unacceptable.
This is the parking lot where the show took place a day later. You can see the skid marks where those cars kept going around and around. Police let it all happen, even though their station is just 2 blocks away. Officers knew about the event. They were at the road outside the parking lot, but they didn't try to break it up.
They weren't worried about people that were in the lot. They were worried about people that were leaving the lot.
Durham police said in a tweet they'll be following up on this matter. Earlier on Sunday, Toronto police also stood and watched demonstrators at City Hall. Protesters at a pop-up clinic noisily trying to discourage parents from vaccinating their children. A Toronto lawyer documenting the event says she was struck while police stood by.
As far as enforcement, we've seen a lot of latitude given to protests. So beyond that, I would say definitely they shouldn't be hitting people.
The police are doing their best to ensure public safety on that broader scale.
But in cases like these, staying back, even when what's going on isn't allowed.
Me and my friends, we're surprised that this thing didn't get shut down.
A parking lot party out of control. Sean O'Shea, Global News, Pickering, Ontario.